everybody. The screencast the tech tool I want to talk about today is a website called Kids Discover, and it's all right. It's all right at best. I thought it was pretty cool when I first started it. I was like, well, this is pretty awesome, but it kind of peters out over time, and I'll tell you why. If you want to get to Kids Discover, all you got to do is type in Kids Discover on Google. First link, it'll send you straight there, and then once you create an account, this website kind of is a little bit sketchy because it automatically signed me up for charges, and even though I don't have my credit card on here or my debit card or whatever, it says it's going to charge me, so I don't like that. I really don't. Oh, no, don't search digital. Yep, I'm not a fan of that, and that was pretty sketchy. I wouldn't want kids running around on this website if things like that were to happen. If you go to the Kids Discover website, you can go sign up for free, which is what I did, and I created an account that it said it was going to charge me after my trial expired. So be aware of that. The way it can help, it is accessible on my laptop and on my phone, which is an Android, and it says it was also available on iPhone, so you can get it on any device, iPad, iPhone, whatever. And you do need the internet for it. It won't work without internet. But it is pretty user-friendly once you get into it. It wasn't that hard to figure out how to use this thing. Here we have our main page, which is like kind of all the things that they want you to have like lessons on and all the things you can read and stuff like that. This website is pretty good because it has pretty interesting topics on like basically everything. And the reading material is pretty easy to read. It differentiates reading level, which I will get into. The thing I like the most is you get right into the standards. Oh, in the classrooms thing, I won't go into that. It's not that interesting, but there's different sections you can put your materials and your lessons in. So if you're like, oh, this class really needs to, like the kids in this class need a lot more instruction on ecosystems, or I want to separate my class into two sections, one focusing on ecosystems, one focusing more on like weather patterns, things like that, or so you can like fill in the gaps of what they need to know. You can do something like that, or if you have multiple different classes. By the standards chart, you can go straight to state standards, Common Core standards. I'm going to do the next generation science standards in 3rd grade. And then this will bring you to all the lessons they have that meet those standards. So these are all the standard descriptions, the standard itself. And then it has like a little blurb about exactly what thing you're talking about right there. So the thing I'm doing is like lakes, rivers, wetlands, ecosystems, because that's going to get into my whole farming, blue-green algae thing. So I'm going to use this standard, and then I'm going to click on the lakes section. And then that will bring me to a bunch of lessons about lakes. And it's got some cool pictures. It's got some easier to read material. And then right here there are 7 different topics in the unit. So this is a whole unit, not just a single lesson, but you can get a single lesson from it. And the lesson I want to do is plants and animals that are inside of a lake. So here's where we get to the pros and cons. The pro is that it is pretty interesting. It has like this cool picture, and then it has some like cool pictures of like not microscopic stuff, but really small things you might not always see in a lake. And then this is like a soda lake, so the kids would be interested in that. And then that's pretty much it. So there's not a ton of reading, but for the students that are in my grade level, which is 3rd grade, they're behind grade level, so they would have a difficult time reading this, which we can make easier for them. So there's 3 different variations in reading level. Since these lessons go from 3rd grade to 8th grade, I think there should be more variation, especially since the students that are in my class are below reading level. This is going to be difficult for them to read, and they're probably going to be like, no, I don't want to read this. Additionally, this looks interactive, but it's really not that interactive. You can't really do anything except click on these green dots, and that just gives you more reading. So the students are going to be like, oh, this is a cool thing to play with. And it's just going to be more reading. And I feel like they're just going to get really frustrated. Not that reading's a bad thing, but when it can be taxing if you're struggling with it over time. So this thing down here definitely helps because you can, let's get back to words. So you can use your little finger pointer and start at the beginning of, start at the beginning of here.
Have at least 4 separate habitats.
And it'll read it to you.
Life because sunlight reaches the bottom.
And then, so if you go to settings, you can speed up or slow down the speech. And then you can also have it translated into another language. So if like, if like there's a word I didn't understand in a language, like if I spoke French and I was reading this in English, then I would be able to translate it. Or if I needed this in English and it was all in French, I'd be able to like translate it back and forth. So, so let's pick French, and then there's a word right here. Let's go with sunlight. I need sunlight translated for me, and you click the world button, and the translation will pop up for you. And I don't speak French. I wish I did, but I don't know if that's a truly accurate translation or not. But there's a bunch of different languages, but there was only like Cantonese, some Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, English, Italian, and French. There really wasn't a whole ton of languages. It was the most common ones. So, oh, and German too. I missed that one. So it's really does do some languages, not a whole lot of them. There's a little feature here, so if you have a student that has a hard time staying in a section, reading in a section, without going all over the place, that will help them. There's a definition button. Whoops, let's get rid of this. There's a definition button, which for sunlight has the definition. I feel like this is pretty easy to understand, but students that struggle, like a tougher definition, the definitions are all in standard, not standard English, but at one reading level. So it might be a little bit too hard for some of the younger kids to read the definitions, which I think is definitely a weakness. And then specifically, like the word decomposers doesn't have a definition, which I think they absolutely should have, especially if the topic is about wetland ecosystems, lakes, the animals living inside of it, and how eventually they create an ecosystem. So overall, it's an alright website to help you teach. I think the best way to use this would just be to introduce something into a class, because the languages, the reading level might be a little bit hard for a third grader to understand. Anything above, or if your third grader is on reading level, it should be fine. So that's a strength. The reading level ability may be a weakness or a strength, more of a weakness than a strength, depending on your student's reading level. It's not interactive like it looks like it's going to be, so that was a major disappointment and a weakness. And there's really not much else to this other than just reading. I could print this out and just, if I spoke another language, I could translate. So the translating feature is definitely a strength. Reading out loud is a strength. This thing that helps you stay focused, that's definitely a strength in the class, and the definitions are. So overall, it's not too terrible, but I really don't see this using as a whole lesson by itself. It'd be an introductory thing to a lesson, and that's pretty much it. If I were to use this in a lesson, I would just use it as the beginning thing. I would beginning reading. I wouldn't use it for anything in depth. Just kind of back up, maybe in between things. It's really not that interactive or fun. I feel like kids would get bored with this pretty quickly.